Welcome to episode 28 of the Walk the Line podcast. I'll be your host, Greg Sowers. And for today's episode, we'll be discussing the start of the season, briefly go over kind of things that have been happening with my team, and then also a few takeaways that I think listeners can use for the starts of their seasons as well. It'll just be me for today, as hockey season's on its way. Um, People's schedules become a little bit more tight. So, unfortunately, just me for today. But we'll work on getting Coach Alex back on the pod and discussing his team and a few other topics throughout the season. So, as I mentioned, thanks for joining us for episode 28, and we'll be discussing the start of this season. So for me, I have my Bantam team. I have high school that we just had our first practice this week, but this episode will be more so geared towards the Bantams. As I mentioned off the top, hopefully you guys can take some of these things that are specific to my experience so far in the first 2 weeks of the year, but use it for your teams and hopefully take some few things away from it. But for our Bantams, obviously, it's a lot of guys' first year of hitting. We have a very young Bantam team, so a lot of the Pee-wees that I had on last year's Flyers team moved up and then got their first, crack at Bantam hockey. It's very hard, and I said this in the first 2 weeks of practice before we played our games. It's very hard to have a player train and get in that mindset of, embracing the physical contact and being ready to take a hit and give a hit in a practice setting. You could do all the hitting drills, you could, teach them about hitting, but there's nothing quite like playing in an actual game against an opponent who's trying to separate you from the puck in a live setting. And we did small area games leading up to it. We have second years on the team that, we're second year Bantams that were hitting last year. But there's still, a way for players to avoid contact if they're truly not ready in a practice, whereas in a game, there's really no way out. So I think a big takeaway that I saw from our first games this weekend is we played 4 games. So I'll recap the weekend really quick. We played 4 games. First game, I believe we lost 8-0. Second game was 7-1 loss. Third game was 5-2 loss, and then we actually won our fourth game against the team we lost to the day before 5-2. So we won that game 5-2. Went 1-3 on the weekend, but as I mentioned, and we'll get into it. Young team, lots of room to grow and learn, and definitely it didn't start off too hot, but a lot of positives taken away from the weekend. But back to the physical contact and the hitting being introduced to the game for a lot of our players. We were definitely very, very timid. And we played an older team our first game, and we're going to play older teams, all the way through the year. But we definitely looked more like Pee-wees than we did a Bantam. And I tried explaining to our guys, to just because you're allowed to hit does not mean, every time you hit, it's going to be this big blow up, guys and parents are yelling. It's just using your body to protect the puck or gain an advantage on an opponent to take the puck away from them. And as the weekend went on, it definitely got better, but just, kind of a few examples that I can remember from our first couple games. If you're approaching a player in the open ice with a puck and it's kind of a scramble, just pucks bouncing everywhere. Our first game, we had players go for that puck, take a swipe at the puck, and either skate by or almost peel off, and then go for round 2 to try to get the puck again. So if they didn't get the puck, they lost the battle, and they didn't get any sort of body contact in there to remove that player from the puck. Now you fast forward to our third and fourth games, and the example I'm using is a first year Bantam, and this example kind of exemplifies the change we had throughout the year or throughout the weekend. He went in for that battle, and he didn't blow up the guy by any means. He simply put his body into his chest, removing the player into the opponent's chest, removing the player from the puck, and the player who actually went to battle for the puck just removed his opponent from the battle, and we had a second player come in and get that puck. Obviously, it's hard to explain over a podcast, but um, it's just being using your body to gain a competitive advantage over your opponent, and then obviously working together with your teammates to win that puck battle. And there was no big hit. I mean, you could probably not even call it a hit. It was just getting your body into a position to battle for that puck or have your teammate come in and help you get that puck. So those little plays all over the ice were definitely more apparent in our third and fourth games. Um, and I think, obviously part of that is there's some nerves involved. There's always nerves in your first game, first weekend of games. You got new teammates, new coach maybe. Um, and it's normal to be nervous, obviously. The first time you do anything, you're probably a little nervous, but I I said this to our players during the weekend as well. It's like the best thing you can do is just get engaged on your first shift, whether that's because you could get out there and may not even touch the puck, but there's going to be a point on that shift where you're able to give a hit or give some body contact or take some body contact. And I've played with players who, that would be their goal for the first shift is, get engaged by giving a hit or getting absolutely blown up. Go back for a puck and, have somebody hit you. Obviously, you don't want to put yourself in a bad spot, but, do something that's going to get you engaged, involved in the game. And honestly, just to get it over with, it's tough, but, and we'll probably discuss this on a later episode because it's very controversial. But bantams, you got kids who are honestly 6 foot, some are over, and then I have kids on my team that are 5'4", 130 pounds. It is completely normal to be nervous about taking a hit from a kid who weighs potentially twice as much as you. Um, and obviously, I personally believe they should move hitting back to Pee Wee, but that's not my call. But it if you are nervous, just try to get it out of the way, and that's way easier said than done. But engage in the contact rather than waiting for it to come to you. And I think again, as the weekend went on, it naturally happens where guys are starting to get hit and give hits, and then by the third and fourth games, we actually started to look like a Bantam team. Um, and we also, and I said this in the locker room as well. This was the one or first instance I've been with a team where we came out for game one of a weekend, and by the fourth game, we were completely different team. Um, and I give a lot of credit to our players, obviously, because they could have, losing 15-1 in our first two games combined. They could have packed it in, could have sulked, could have, you know, thought I was an idiot, whatever. They could have been yelling at each other, but they didn't. They kept pushing along. We got better as the weekend went on. We helped each other out. The teammates were talking to each other. I didn't go in the locker room and yell. In the second game, I did have a little, hey, let's wake up, let's start hitting your Bantam hockey player speech. But, other than that, it was a pretty uh, calm weekend where nobody panicked and we improved as the weekend went on. Um, and a lot of that just has to do with the kids' attitude, staying positive, focusing on controlling what you can control, and realizing, we are a young team, and we're going to get better as the season goes on. There's not this weekend isn't it, and it's not going to set the standard for our year. Um, Another thing we mentioned about our first games is, your bantams, your hitting. It's someone eventually throughout the year is going to get hurt. And we had two guys actually get hurt this weekend. Hopefully they can come back soon, but it's part of the game, and there's a reason why there's a huge drop off of player participation from uh, you know peewees to bantams. Then after bantams, it drops even more, just because it takes a special kind of person to be willing to play hockey as it's a hard game, it's a physical game, and it takes a little bit of cojones to go out there and battle for those pucks and block shots and get hit and give hits. So one of the things I said is, if you're going to play this game this year, and now in your future, if you're deciding to still play hockey until you get to men's league, um, you're going to have to play hurt. And I wanted to make sure I explained that in the right way where, there's a difference between hurt and injured, right? So if you're hurt, you got bruises, you're sore, you got maybe you got the Bower bumps on your feet, some, your equipment's not fitting the right way, you maybe got your hand sore from blocking a shot. Um, that's stuff you can play through. Um, and you can play through being hurt. Obviously, if it's something involving with your head, you have a headache, you want to be careful of those things and make sure you don't have a concussion and things like that. But you can play through bumps and bruises. So you can play hurt. Playing injured, okay, unless you're making millions of dollars, you hear about these guys in the NHL playoffs and like Bergeron playing through a punctured lung, guys playing with separated shoulders, things like that. Look, you're 13 and 14 years old. I'm not expecting you to do that. You have a long life ahead of you. You got to take care of yourself, and you're paying to play. You're not making millions of dollars. So I'm not expecting anyone to play injured. Playing injured means, you know, you physically cannot do your role on the ice because of an injury. You got a broken wrist. You uh, sprained your ankle, something like that impedes your ability to play. You have a concussion, right? There's a difference. I don't want kids to play injured, especially if with how young they are and they got their whole lives ahead of them. But having kids understand that hockey is a physical game and you will have to play hurt at some point. Another thing that we discussed, and I end up talking about it with my teams pretty much every year, and I believe we mentioned it on the podcast as well. But this aspect and theory of the butterfly effect, right? So I could be completely off of my origin of this story, but it's like if a butterfly flaps his wings or its wings, uh, the week prior in one area. Let's say a butterfly flaps its wings in Nashville, and then that gust of wind causes something to happen in nature, and then the temperature drops, and all these things happen. But if the butterfly, and then there's a tornado, like a week later, right? If that butterfly didn't flap its wings a week before, does that tornado happen? And like all those series of things happening to lead to that end result of a tornado. And I kind of bring that up because it relates to the game that we play with hockey, where it could be you're in your defensive zone. Okay, you're the winger on the wall. D gives you a good breakout pass. You fumble the pass, puck doesn't get out of the zone. Okay, there's step one. Okay, step two, the D who kept the puck in the zone goes D to D at the blue line, and that D gets a shot through on net because our other winger was not in the shooting lane. Okay, there's two mistakes. And then the rebound goes to a player on their team in front of the net, and our D doesn't pick up their stick or box that guy out, so the opponent in front of the net gets the puck and puts it into the net. So the first mistake was the winger not getting the puck out of the zone. Okay. And then it led to two more mistakes, us not getting in the shooting lane and the defenseman not having the guy in front of the net. But if mistake number one doesn't happen, the puck never goes D to D and never gets shot on net. So I just bring it up in a case of, mistakes are going to happen, but it's how many mistakes that we have in a row that lead to a goal. And obviously sometimes it's just one mistake, a D pass in the offensive zone, the winger picks it off and goes on a breakaway. Like, okay, there's a one mistake goal. But just trying to get into our players' heads that, mistakes are going to happen, but it's how our team responds to those mistakes, and we just don't keep compounding mistakes, bad decisions one after another, leading to pucks on the back of our net. So just a little kind of analogy there that I like to bring up with our teams throughout the year. And again, mistakes are going to happen, but let's just make sure we limit them and try to stop them on their course till that quote unquote tornado happens. A couple small things that happened over the first 2 weeks. Um, we had guys forget their gear. Forgot a helmet, forgot a glove, little jerseys. So you guys are old enough, okay? Honestly, unless you're a mite or maybe even a squirt, you guys should be packing your own bags. It's time to mom and dad can drive you to the rink, but you guys should take some onus and pack your own bag, make sure everything's ready to go. You got your water bottle, both sets of jerseys, all your equipment, because part of the, the game is being prepared, when you're getting ready for the game. Um, if you're forgetting your helmet and your gloves for a game, how prepared are you really to get on the ice and go play? So just make sure you're checking your bag. Um, and then another thing, and this is more of a coaching perspective, I guess. The first part of the year, the first 2 weeks, I thought we had a certain type of skill set, and obviously moving up a division from Pee Wees to Bantams. Um, it's a totally different game, bigger, faster, stronger. Um, and I misinterpreted what we had on the ice, and I think there's obviously a lot of room to improve, but because I thought we had more of a base skill set than we actually did. My first 2 weeks, first week was kind of getting the rust off, a lot of passing, shooting, skating, and then I actually got into forechecks and breakouts, and we talked about the power play a little bit and defensive zone coverage. Um, and not that that's wasted time to go over those things, and they're obviously very important as the season goes on. But in hindsight's 2020, what I wish I would have done is making sure that we had a base skill set across the board for our team. Because what happened was when we had our first weekend of games, you could see the kids were trying to do the breakout and the forecheck and the things that we discussed, but they frankly just weren't as fast as the other team. We weren't as strong as the other team. We weren't making passes as crisp as the other team. So, and in saying that, it's very important to make sure you're able to do the basic things before you move on to things that are more advanced. So, making tape to tape passes, catching those passes on your forehand and backhand, transitioning from forwards to backwards, these little things that you're doing 10, 20 times on each shift. Well, you need to be very good and consistent at those things, or else if you're trying to do a breakout, well, it falls apart with one bad pass or one, bobble of the puck. So, kind of in as a reaction to that, this week we got back to, you know, transitioning, a lot of skating around cones, making 5, 10 foot passes. We broke up into stations so the kids were constantly moving, working on their conditioning. And so this week of practice, we didn't do one breakout, we didn't do one, forecheck. I think we did a couple 2-on-1s, but there was nothing that we did that was system related, um, to just make sure that we're improving on our individual skill sets so that we could take our individual skills and produce a system that we can all play in. Um, it's it's great to have all those things laid out, but at the end of the day, if you can't you know skate with the team you're playing against, or we can't take a body check or a battle for a puck in a corner, all those systems are pretty much useless, right? Um, so just a few things that happened over the first 2 weeks in our first weekend of games, but the season's just getting started. And as I mentioned, the guys stayed positive, and I think that's the biggest thing is they didn't shut it down after the first 2 games, and they came back, kept working, um, listened, didn't get on each other, and but they were rewarded at the end of the weekend with a win that they previously lost to, so or against a team they previously lost to. So. Um, lots of room for improvement. Season's still young, um, and we'll keep plugging away. We got games in Atlanta next weekend, and Coach Alex will be down there as well. So we'll see if we can knock out an episode while we're down in Atlanta. But I appreciate everyone listen to the Walk the Line podcast. Again, this is episode 28, and we should have another one ready to go for you next week. So hope everyone enjoys their weekend. Thanks. Bye.